Last year, Brazil reached the milestone of 30 years having this currency we have called real. Plano Real was something that was developed back in the early 90s, and it was a response for a terrible inflation this country had to endure. This video is a celebration to this 30 years of this currency and the plan that changed the lives of all the Brazilians once and for all. It's after the intro. Do you guys want to speak Portuguese? Have you ever thought of having a course of Brazilian Portuguese? Well, I have some news for you. We have created our own Brazilian Portuguese course. The name is Brasil Sem Legendas, which is Brazil Unsubtitled, like the name of the channel. I myself have written the story in the book and have created all the exercises, all the conversations that will guide you through learning this beautiful language of Brazilian Portuguese. Take a look at this video.
Que legal, Mark. Elas vão amar a surpresa.
Eu acho que sim. Além disso, passarei alguns dias ajudando Obrar a preparar a nossas consultoria no Rio. Entrevistarei algumas pessoas para trabalhar com a gente. Organizarei o time e darei treinamento de vendas.
Send us a direct message on Instagram. The account appears right here. Don't miss this opportunity. Send us a message and guarantee your space in our agenda, in our course, to finally learn the Brazilian Portuguese and come to Brazil with knowledge of the language. Inflation is a term we hear frequently. It can be measured by various types of inflation indexes, guys, which track the widespread increase in product prices that directly affect our wallets. In recent years, we have heard about inflation remaining in the single digits. But did you know that Brazil once experienced a hyperinflation exceeding 2,000% in the year 1993? Yes, you heard that right. I said it correctly. 2,000% in the year 1993. The transition to the Brazilian real was a response to the years of uncertainty that we Brazilians endured. It was practically impossible to make long-term plans since prices could, on a snap of fingers, guys, double the cost of a trip, for example, within just a month. Nicknamed by us as the Dragon, hyperinflation simply eroded our purchasing power back in the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. To give you an idea, guys, of what I'm talking about, in June 1994, inflation was at 47.43%. This meant that if you were buying a basic car for 35,000 reais, after just 1 month, it would cost 53,000 reais. Are you sitting? I think you need to sit down to hear this story. It's a horror story. It was common practice in Brazil, guys, for people to do their shopping for the entire month all at once, stocking up in large quantities as soon as their monthly payment checked in. Why? Just to avoid the risk of price hikes due to monetary adjustments that happened all the time. Things only began to stabilize with the implementation of the Plano Real. But before reaching 1994, the Brazilian economy went through a long journey of ups and downs. It was like a roller coaster. So let's take a look at the scenario before 1994 for you guys to have an idea what I'm talking about. Brazil had just emerged from a turbulent period in its history, which was the ditadura militar, the military dictatorship. The gap between the rich and the poor had widened, and Brazil's external debt had skyrocketed from $3,294 billion in 1964 to $105.171 billion in 1985. I'm gonna give you some time to digest this information. You okay? Can I go on? Let's go. During the 80s, the state faced serious financial difficulties. The government was spending more than it collected in taxes. Public funds were misused on overpriced construction projects and lost to corruption. and the excessive number of public employees contributed to unsustainable expenditures. At the time, guys, the country was beginning its return to democracy. José Sarney, who became the president of the republic after the death of Tancredo Neves, also a president that didn't get to be inaugurated, launched the Plano Cruzado in 1986 to curb inflation. The Cruzado replaced the Cruzeiro, cutting 3 zeros from the previous currency, with the conversion rate set at 1 Cruzado equals 1,000 Cruzeiros. So 1,000 Cruzeiros, you cut 3 zeros and you had 1 Cruzado. The circulation period of the Cruzado, guys, happened from April 22nd, 1986 to March 15th, 1990. The Sarney government adopted the practice of freezing wages until inflation reached 20%, at which point salaries would be adjusted. This policy was called the wage trigger, or as we said in Portuguese, o gatilho salarial. Another measure was a 1-year price freeze, which meant that products had fixed prices for consumers. However, inflation continued to rise. It was like a monster. It was like Jason from Friday the 13th. You couldn't kill it. Meaning that businesses in productive sectors were losing profit as they couldn't increase prices while production costs kept rising. To avoid financial losses, companies started producing less, and products began disappearing from store shelves, leading to shortages. Eventually, the government was forced to unfreeze prices, making the end of the Plano Cruzado. And this I learned in college: freezing prices has never been a good solution. Never. In 1987, the Plano Bresser was introduced, and it was named after the then Minister of Finances, Luiz Carlos Bresser Pereira, under the Sarney, the President administration. The goal remained the same, guys. What was it? To control inflation, of course. This time the strategy was to continue freezing prices, but now they would be adjusted every 90 days, along with a wage reduction. Initially, the plan seemed to work, but soon it was overwhelmed by the inflation dragon once again. It was not a dragon, guys, it was Jason Voorhees. Later in the Sarney government, Maílson da Nóbrega replaced Bresser as Minister of Finances and launched the Plano Verão in 1989. Oh my God, I'm getting old because I remember all this. I was just 9 years old when that happened. Nóbrega continued freezing prices and introduced yet another currency, the Cruzado Novo. Are you following? It was Cruzeiro, and then it became Cruzado, and now Cruzado Novo. The circulation period of the Cruzado Novo happened from January 16th, 1989 to October 31st, 1990. The Cruzado Novo replaced the Cruzado in yet another unsuccessful attempt to control inflation. The conversion rate was 1 Cruzado Novo equals 1,000 Cruzados. Elected president in 1990, Fernando Collor de Mello implemented his economic plan, which became widely known as the Plano Collor, or the Collor Plan. A source for bad memories for many Brazilians, guys, the Plano Collor was infamous for its savings confiscation. Yes, I remember that, guys. There are people that probably suicided during this period because out of the blue, the president decided to confiscate all the savings of the Brazilians. Can you imagine? The goal here was the same one that had persisted for decades, stabilizing inflation. So they tried all things to stabilize inflation, everything they could. To achieve this time, the government decided to drain liquidity, meaning it removed the money from circulation. Deposits exceeding 50,000 Cruzados Novos in saving accounts were frozen, and people could no longer withdraw their own money. I told you had to sit down to follow this video. People had their savings frozen. They couldn't withdraw their own money. That's what happens. And I remember witnessing the whole thing. This drastic measure froze 80% of the country's money supply, equivalent to 30% of Brazil's GDP, for 18 months, guys. 18 months. Not only that, okay, the plan included voluntary layoffs of public employees, all in an effort to curb government spending. Yes, a new currency was again introduced. This time they replaced the Cruzado Novo by the Cruzeiro again. The name, yes, don't get confused. It was Cruzeiro, it became Cruzado, and then Cruzado Novo, and then Cruzeiro again. And the circulation of this 2.0 Cruzeiro happened from April 15th, 1990 to September 30th, 1992. Unlike previous currency reforms, guys, which typically removed the 3 zeros from the denomination while maintaining a 1:1,000 exchange ratio, the Cruzado Novo to Cruzeiro conversion kept the same value, meaning one Cruzado Novo was equal the Novo Cruzeiro, the new 1 Cruzeiro. A year later, as the economic situation remained unsustainable, a second phase of the Collor Plan was introduced. After the failure of Collor 1, Collor 2 also aimed to control price increases and stimulate industry. Wage and price freezes continued. One significant change was the elimination of overnight investments, a short-term investment system where many businesses deposited their money overnight and withdrew it the next business day with a minimal return. In its place, the government created a financial investment fund whose returns were linked to the taxa referencial, or TR, a reference interest rate used in Brazil at the time. However, repeated failures to control inflation, unpopular policies such as those of freezing bank deposits, and corruption scandals led to Collor's impeachment in 1992. His vice president, Itamar Franco, took over as president of the Republic and began drafting a new economic plan for Brazil. But guys, what was the Plano Real exactly? Well, President Itamar Franco was inaugurated as president at a critical moment. In 1993, inflation reached the highest level ever recorded in Brazil's history, over 2,000% in just 12 months, guys. To combat hyperinflation, Itamar appointed Fernando Henrique Cardoso, pay attention to this name, Fernando Henrique Cardoso as Minister of Finance to develop a new economic plan. You guys might know him or might have known him as President Cardoso because he was the president at Bill Clinton's time, I remember that. That same year, yet another currency was introduced, the Cruzeiro Real. This time, the conversion rate was 1 Cruzeiro Real equal 1,000 cruzados. I don't even remember which currency it was. The circulation period was October 29th, 1993 to September 15th, 1994. The government's challenge this time was to create a currency that, unlike its predecessors, would bring long-term economic stability, rather than just temporarily controlling prices. Let's break down the stages of the Plano Real right now. Fiscal adjustment. The government sought to balance public accounts by reducing excessive spending and increasing tax revenue. Implementation of the Unidade Real de Valor, or the real value unit, maybe, which was called URV. The Unidade Real de Valor, or URV, was a virtual currency introduced in March 1994 and pegged to the previous day's commercial exchange rate of the US dollar. In practice, store prices were displayed in URV, but payments were still made in Cruzeiro Real. The exchange rate between URV and Cruzeiro Real was updated daily by Brazil's central bank, or Bacen as we call here, and it was published in the media. Let me show you this example just to make things even easier to understand. If you guys lived in Brazil and on March 29th, 1994, you went to the supermarket to buy a chicken that was 1 URV, you would end up paying 895.03 cruzeiros reais at the checkout, because that was the exchange rate between the URV and the Cruzeiro Real that day. The next stage for the Plano Real, the Real currency. The official launch of the Real currency occurred on July 1st, 1994. On that day, all Cruzeiro Real balances were converted to Real. The exchange rate was 1 Real equals 2,750 Cruzeiros Reais. The circulation period of this new currency from July 1st, 1994, thank God, up until today, March 22nd, 2025, and may God allow it survive as longer or forever, I would say. Since Brazilians had already seen multiple currency changes due to various economic plans, the real wasn't necessarily a shocking novelty. However, one key factor in the smooth transition was the government's advance notice to the population. I remember watching, for example, the World Cup 1994, in which Brazil was the champion, with Romário, Bebeto, Tafarel, Dunga, and so many others, and seeing the sports commentators saying, Real, the new plan is coming out soon. And that was in June, I remember, in the United States, the World Cup. Not only that, guys, the URV system had already helped pave the way for the adoption of the Real. So guys, the Plano Real played a crucial role in controlling inflations in Brazil. Inflation had been eroding purchasing power, as I had said previously, and economic stability allowed consumer confidence to return. Guys, it was a breath of fresh air when I saw prices controlled, guys, and prices with lower figures, like 1 Real you would buy rice, 2 reais you would buy this, not 1,000 reais, 1 million reais a bag of rice. Can you imagine? I went to Chile, for example, and I saw the numbers are calculated over 1,000. For me, it's really strange to see this. A look at price behavior in the years following the Plano Real shows a notable decrease in inflation after 1994, when the plan was implemented. However, the inflation dragon never fully disappeared, though it weakened significantly over time. Recognizing this, the Central Bank of Brazil introduced an inflation targeting system in 1999, setting maximum inflation limits to prevent prices from spiraling out of control again. The economic policies of the Plano Real successfully curbed inflation through a multi-step strategy that helped to stabilize the economy. Today, the real is no longer as stronger as it was in its early years, making inflation control an ongoing priority for every government. Yes, we have inflation nowadays, but it can't be compared. It can't be compared. I don't know exactly the rates. I'm going to leave here the rate of inflation that we are facing right now, but it just can't be compared. After all, guys, inflation impacts the entire country and directly affects people's financing. Discussing inflation also means discussing social and economic development, of course. And there are other things that I need to mention. Because of the popularity of Plano Real back in 1994 and the following years, Fernando Henrique Cardoso became really known, really idolized in this country, and he became the president, winning in a crushing victory in the first run. He was elected, and he was also elected for the second mandate because people loved the stability that he brought to this country with his team. So thank you very much for watching this video up until now. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, please subscribe to the channel, smash the like button for this video to reach other people. You know how the algorithm works, so please help us. We also have 3 communities here. If you guys want to take a look at them and support the channel even more, it's gonna go a long way for me to produce more and more videos around here. As of yet, thank you very much, and may God bless you. E a gente se vê. Tchau, tchau. Subscribe to the secondary channel that I have, Portuguese with Mark Saint. Go check it out if you want to learn Portuguese. Bye bye, guys.